Reports, Montgomery County Tea Party, and tonight we're interviewing R Inman. He is running for Conroe Independent School District, position 1. It's Wednesday, September 26th. With me are Larry Rogers, Dell Fessenden, Dennis Tibbs, and Pat Tibbs. And Dell, as we discussed, if you want to kick it off, you can go with up to 5-minute opening, and then we'll start into with the Q&A.
Very well. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and educating yourselves on all the various voters. I've got a pretty extensive background in finance as well as in business. I've been self-employed since I was about 24 years old. I've started a number of businesses, built them up from nothing, then I've been very fortunate to be able to sell them. Most recently, I was owner of Nationwide Insurance and Financial Services in Conroe, to which I sold that after 25 years, about a year and a half ago and retired. But from that, I'm currently a builder and a pastor down in Houston. You can cough if you like. In any event, I just have a very extensive background. I've taught at Lone Star College for a number of years. I teach currently at Lee College, as well as Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary. And I'm being told it's too loud. And then also I'm building homes. I pastor a church down in Houston. My wife's a school teacher, and it gives me, I think, a unique perspective in understanding the challenges that school teachers face, as well as the students. We've had roughly, my wife and I figured at one time, we've had about 80 children in the last 20 years come through our home. Several of them, I used to get up in the morning and drive them to Hawk or to get their GED and work with them over the years. And I have always found helping that next generation in their educational goals to be a very important responsibility that God has placed on me. I've got an MBA in finance. I was in mortgage banking for years, much of the Woodlands here. I used to be a broker down here in the Woodlands, and when there was just about 15 or 20 red lights in the whole district, I guess that was back in 90 or 88, maybe 1990, I was doing mortgages down here. So I'm very familiar with the South County as well as East County. My wife was a teacher at Caney Creek School for a number of years in the CIS district, and we live, of course, in Conroe, CISD district as well. Well, that's pretty much my opening, kind of giving you a quick rundown of my heart and helping children and doing what's best for schools as well as what's best for the kids and their educational goals, and some of my occupational and educational background as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dell, and thanks for coming in again. Under the questionnaire of the general category, the second one was, what do you view as the top 3 issues facing CISD in the next 5 years? And you replied, growth and enrollment, number 1, school safety, second, and then third, making sure that new dollars end up in the classroom and with teachers. Do you know what the split is right now between teachers and administrative support and admin?
I've talked to several people about that, and I'm getting somewhere roughly, for every 22 teachers, there's about 17 non-teaching positions. And at first it kind of makes sense. You think, well, school bus drivers in the cafeteria, and the more I dug into that and peeled those layers of the onion back, what I found out was that does not count bus drivers, and that does not count the food staff people. They said that's a different program under transportation, as well as the food is a different. And then you start saying, well, if there's 22 teachers to every 17 non-teaching positions that don't count transportation or food, I had 2 or 3 people say that's the number. That's definitely something I'd like to dig into and find out. Why do we almost have a 1-to-1 ratio of non-teachers to teachers in the system?
Did you say who that source was?
I didn't. I could, but I would like to get their name before I say it. Jason Gonzalez.
Okay, CISD's 2017 APR, Annual Performance Report, actually looks pretty good. Even with, I guess not even with, but with those numbers. How would you improve on that? And I'm talking about how the CISD measures up to its peers in the STAR test and other KPI type measurement tools that they utilize to see how effective that they are.
Well, one thing I would bring back, and I've heard it said often by a lot of people, just bring back the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. On my Facebook page, Dale Inman for CISD, I've put on there, we need to let teachers teach. And I've talked to probably 15 or 20 teachers. As a matter of fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, I did quite a bit of substitute teaching. And a lot of that substitute teaching was to see what's going on in the classroom, listen to other teachers, hear what they're saying in the break room. And so many teachers complain about their hands are tied, where they'd like to teach the students things that are important to teach in school versus teaching all these things that are put on them by admin and various other outside interests that say this is what you have to teach them. And even my own wife sometimes has told me, I know what this student needs, but here's the piece of paper that I've been told I have to give them. And it's just not working. As a matter of fact, I would ask a lot of the parents out there, when you sit down tonight with your kids at the dinner table and help them with their homework, try to do some of their math. And I'm not talking 11th, 12th grade geometry, but like your 5th and 6th grade fundamentals of math. Look at that homework assignment and see if you can do it. And they're teaching stuff that I believe is just ridiculous to be teaching at that age. And they're not teaching in the way people learn, if that makes any sense. I know one of the issues I really believe strongly is Texas is doing, we've gotten rid of Common Core, and they've brought in it under just a different name called C-Scope. But even my own daughter, who's in 10th grade, I apologize, school just started, she's 11th grade now. If she watches this, she'll be mad I called her a 10th grader. She's a junior, and I've seen some of her homework, and even simple math, I've been baffled by the system they're trained to do. As a matter of fact, one of her teachers a year or two ago, my daughter got the answer correct, but the teacher was saying it wasn't done in the right way. And they were trying to take off for her coming to the correct answer and the way I did it. And they said, but that's not the system we told them. And those are the kind of things I think we need to stop in our school systems.
So your wife is teaching now?
She teaches at Willis High School. We had talked about some years ago, Bob, I may run for CISD someday. And we discussed that back and forth, and I told her, I'm good either way, but if you work at CISD, it would probably be better if I was not a school board member. So she teaches at Willis High School, it's a different district, and I don't see any issues of conflict there, it being heard in a completely different district.
That was the reason for my question. On the budget that CISD has, do you know if they're designating any dollars to put seat belts on the current buses that do not have them?
Yeah, I've got the report of that here. This is the 17-18. I have not yet seen the 18-19. I understand it's out, but I looked for it today, and last week, I think Monday or Tuesday last week I looked for it. It's not easily accessible that I could find. But it may very well be there. But the old one I'm looking at, it does not say anything about seat belts that I could see throughout the whole report. It's about roughly 15, maybe, I don't know, a dozen pages, 15 pages, the report. And I didn't see anything there about seat belts. Have you found anything about seat belts? You haven't either?
No.
Yeah, neither have I.
I know that they supposedly are, any new buses they get are definitely going to have seat belts. But I don't know anything about the current buses without seat belts. Okay.
No.
Okay, talking about Common Core and all of the teaching to the test, teachers being told what they can and cannot teach. You say you want to get back to the basics. Sounds like a great objective. The key is, the million-dollar question is, how? How do you intend to achieve that?
Yes, sir, Dale. Thanks for asking that question. It can't be done at the local school level. I don't believe. It's going to have to be done in Austin. Whether we like it or not, I don't. I believe the local school board should be elected by the citizens, which they are, and the local citizens should control what the curriculum is in that district. As we all know, though, Austin chooses statewide, and I'm very much a person that believes in decentralized government. And the closer you get to the mom and dad paying the taxes and what they want educated with their kids is probably the best bet. So, but that's the ideal situation, the optimal. The functional situation, though, is that it would come out of Austin. I actually think that's a plus for me. I'm very good friends with Senator Creighton, Cecil Bell, Will Metcalf, Mark, soon to be our HD 15 rep, Steve Toth. Matter of fact, at the state convention, Steve called me and asked me to be his roommate. So I think having that kind of already got strong relationships with our representatives from Montgomery County to Austin and having those open doors available will be a feather in my cap as far as running on a school board locally, with being able to call them on the phone and asking them questions straight away. I know a year or two ago, Representative Metcalf even called me on some issues. Hey Dale, I'm in Austin, we're about to vote on something, what do you understand about this situation? What do you think about it? So I think having that kind of relationship and not having to build that relationship over the next 2, 3, 4 years is a plus. So as far as changing it, going to Austin and lobbying, basically saying we need local control back in the school board and out of Austin.
Okay, I don't have time for my next question, so I'll pass to Dennis.
Okay. Well, generally describe this job. How many people are on the board? Where do they meet? When do they meet? What are the term limits? What are their powers? Who can they fire? What can they recommend?
Well, actually, that's a good question. A lot of people, for some reason, feel the superintendent is the authority. The superintendent is not the authority. It's the school board. Ultimately, it's the taxpayer and the voter that's the authority, because they're the ones that put in the school board. The school board actually sets the vision and the budgets and the goals for the district, the objectives, and then hires a superintendent to say, fill these goals and objectives with the resources we've given you. So I do find, pragmatically, I don't like when you go to a lot of different school board websites and you see the superintendent at the top and then the school board underneath that, name and photo, and it's really, that's not really the way it should be. It should be, you know, the local taxpayer, the school board, the superintendent, and then on down. So I don't know if that's directly your question, but it's a 4-year term.
How many people are on it?
I believe there's 7 on the school board with the superintendent.
The superintendent, what is his salary?
Well, my understanding is it'd be somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 a year.
Do the board members make any money?
The board, I don't believe so, and I would be against it. Yeah, if it could, no, I'm not, yeah. If someone were to say, I think board members should make money, I'd say, no, they shouldn't.
Do they have to live in the district?
Correct, they do.
Okay.
My understanding is, yes, absolutely, they do need to live in the district to be a board member, and the board itself does not get any salary.
And they're 4-year terms every 2 years?
Correct, it's staggered.
Okay.
So, just a little clarification. Earlier you said that we had Common Core and C-Scope has come in. Did you mean the inverse? We originally had C-Scope and then Common Core has come in.
Yeah, well, it's really, it's pretty close to the same program, they just changed the name.
Right. So, are you familiar with IB, International Baccalaureate?
Is that where the international at the college level is trying to force, I think, is that from the UN?
Yes.
Yeah, the UN is trying to force what its educational goals are on colleges and campuses.
Right. And
I'm not real familiar with it, because I do teach, have taught at Lone Star 15, 20 years now at Lee College. And I've heard this is coming, but it hasn't hit, to my knowledge, the junior level college at full bore yet.
Yeah, it hadn't hit CISD, but it has Magnolia, and they've embraced it. As a matter of fact, on their, I guess it's 149, 1488 campus, they have it, a nice little sign on their building. So something to be aware of if you're elected. Okay, what are the top 3 areas where the budget for CISD needs to be adjusted? You said administrator salaries, football stadiums, facades on existing buildings. How much on, so you had mentioned that the superintendent makes between 300 and 300.
That's my understanding.
What would be your ideal rate? What would you reduce that to if you were king and
Well,
had a chance to do that?
I'm going to think, I tell you what, I've had a lot of business, restaurants, limo companies, insurance agencies. I generally, as owner, might have made 1.5 to 2 times what my highest employee did. So I just know in the private sector, for a lot of operations, you don't get where you're getting 6, 7, 8 times the multiple of what your people are. Again, I might have a little bit different view on this, but when I hear people say, well, I'm looking at my peers, I would say the peers of CISD, the superintendent, his peers are the parents and the school board, and the teachers are his peers. They always like to go out and look at other things, and I just say, well, that's not really equitable. I don't believe, getting that kind of money when your teachers are making, I think Conroe ISD starts at $53,000 a year, is what I understand. And so if he's making $350, that's 6 to 8 times, depending on where his final salary benefit package, all that ends up.
Right.
And I just don't know that that's equitable. It's not the issue. People say, well, if he got paid 0, is it really going to help your taxes? No, but every group along the way, it will sure help the culture of that government entity to say, hey, we are going to start cutting back on spending. But even something else I looked at, this next year the budget is increasing $22 million, and they're bringing in, I think, 1,527 students, or right at 1,600 students. Well, when you divide that increase by that students, that's 14,600 per student. Where's all that going? So when they say, well, it only cost us about $8,000 per student, this next batch is costing $14,600 per student. And I don't hear anyone saying, hey, let's consider the taxpayer's plight. All I ever hear is, let's consider new programs and new staff and
New bonds.
yeah, yeah, and that's not even counting bonds. And I understand CISD is wanting to bring a new bond in here in the next year or two also, is what I'm hearing.
The salaries, as you've said a couple of times, teachers start out at like 50, 52, 53. What, Governor Abbott, he wanted to increase teacher pay to 100,000. In your opinion, where should a teacher's salary start, and then after they've got some longevity, where should it go? What's the high, low and high?
Yeah, if you're saying for here at CISD, I think is that your question, because it would be different if you're in a different place of Texas. It's so big, it's hard to say what a Texas teacher salary should be.
Right.
I think a few weeks ago, some of the teachers at Conroe High School, I was talking to them about this, and they had said how the state minimum, I think, is $19,000. And again, my wife's a teacher, I support them, but I told her, I said, well, in the private sector, do you know what the minimum is getting a college degree going into the private sector? What the state law says you gotta pay minimum? There is none. So I hear you complaining that the state law says the minimum is 19. The private sector gets guaranteed of nothing. My first job with my master's in finance was $18,000 a year. And so when I hear you saying, you with your 4-year, 9-month teaching job should get paid 3 times as much as me with my MBA 12-month-a-year job, it's hard for me to really have a whole lot of understanding in your plight. But anyway, I probably just lost a dozen votes, at least. But I would say Conroe, it should be representative of that community. And if the Conroe ISD, if there is a median income, I don't want our teachers, having to go on food stamps, or their kids have the worst jacket at school, or they got to wear those shoes that are old. But nor should they be driving the Cadillacs, or the high-end, top of the line, and people saying, oh boy, look at the teachers are making way more money than the average taxpayers in that area. It should be comparable.
I think what I was trying to get you to answer is what in your opinion, as you sit on that side of the fence, what do you think the low should be and what should be the high?
I think 40 would probably be a bottom. No, I'm saying for this community, that's reasonable. I have no problem with 53.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with a starting teacher making 53. Upper end, I know Abbott said 100. I'd like to see how he's going to pay for that.
Okay.
As far as running an election, I'd say give him $1 million a year. But we got to come back to pragmatically, how's that going to be done?
Okay.
So you're saying that Abbott was just fishing for votes this
I'll let you say
November?
that. I'll let you say that.
Okay, how regularly do you attend the ISD meeting, board meetings?
Well, up until recently, very little, because I've pretty much always had multiple jobs. As I said, for the last 7 or 8 years, I've pastored a church as well as had the insurance. I retired from that a year or two ago. I'm a builder. I've got 2 spec houses, hopefully going to be done by December. I do teach at Lee College. I work in the prisons. And I find myself at 54 years of age shutting down a lot of that type of stuff. I taught Woodlands rush soccer here for about 15 or 20 years here in the Woodlands. And I quit that about a year or two ago, and I told my wife, we discussed as a family, that I'm gonna start shutting down a lot of those other services to the community so I could focus on something like CISD. So I'm clearing my schedule to answer your question.
Okay, and that was part of where I was leading, is how you can find time for this, all the things that you're currently involved in. You are already planning to phase out some of those. Okay.
I've turned over the cattle operation to my daughter up at the farm. So I'm kind of withdrawn from that now.
Oh,
I still go up to the farm. Don't get me wrong, I do like working with the cattle. They're easier than working with than people.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay, local control, very conservative value, very often mentioned topic. Devil is in the details. You mentioned before about the curriculum decision should be at the ISD level. Well, not at the state level, not at the federal level. How far, if you're going to go down the scale, how far down do you go? Maybe it should be at the school level rather than the ISD level. In other words, how do you do? What makes one decision right over another?
Well, I have my undergrad's in marketing, and I'm very big on the concept of giving or offering people what they want. I think even in a district like CISD, when you get to North County, South County, and East County, I think we have 61 schools in the CISD district, and I do think those schools are going to have different challenges and opportunities. So I would give the control even almost down to the parents and that principal of that school to say, what does your area in this school need to help these kids be successful? One of my main things is to give every child an opportunity at success. And I know that's an umbrella statement, but what that does mean is some kids do need career training. Some kids do need vocational training. Some kids do need to get ready for college. You might have a higher percentage at one school that's going to college than at a different school. And so you might have to say, we're going to have every child's going to have an opportunity, but we're going to have to maybe shift some dollars or shift some programming around for if this district has a lot of vocational people, is that where that school is going to have those vocational opportunities? This school has a majority of kids going to college, so we're going to have to maybe shift some things. I'm really happy with that, again, this is Willis ISD, but they put that whole new building a year or two ago. They were talking about opening another campus. And what they decided to do was open an entire building. So we're going to have one campus, we're going to add a career and vocational wing, or it's actually a separate building to it. So that we can have kids who are going to college have a track, kids who are going to career and vocational have a track for them, some opportunities. So I really think, really at the very bottom level, you have to kind of do that's best. It may not be exactly what you're looking for. Some years ago I had a limo company, I had 8 limousines, and I would tell the drivers, you know your clients, because they would say, well, you got a glass or this kind of candy bar or chips. I said, you know your clients better than I do. When your client says they want something we can provide, you provide it to them. So,
Okay. Yes.
So where is the Lee College located?
it's based in Baytown, but they've got multiple campuses, and I do a lot of work in Huntsville.
Okay, so that's not, is that one of the things that you drop if you get the decision?
Possibly, I only teach 2 classes a week, usually on Thursdays, as a matter of fact. Tomorrow I'll be noon to 3 and then 5:30 to 8:30 at night.
Okay. How many students are in CISD?
Right at 63,000.
Okay. And it's my understanding there's something like 7,000 employees.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think 7,500 is the number I saw.
so doing the math there's about 8 students per employee.
Correct.
So if it's 30 or 40 or 25, that's like 4 or 5 staff for each classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I mean, that's probably a lot more than 1-to-1. So you think that you can get rid of a lot of those? I mean, where do you, does that include bus drivers, you think, the 7,500?
Well, the numbers I've seen, it says the 22 teachers to every 17 staff. It does say excludes bus drivers and food.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that 7,500 figure includes them or not, but I know in most of the literature they have, it does not include them when you say how many staff to teachers.
Well, if you divide that into 60,000 students, it's a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
like-
I will say some of the things that the schools do with those non-teacher positions, I've talked to some teachers, they said some of that stuff is regulated out of Austin. And you might have a certain student that has to have a teacher follow them around, or it's almost a one-to-one. I know years ago, I think I was at A.R. Turner teaching in the Willis district, and there was, I think, 3 or 4 kids. I was teaching a class, and like 2 of the classes, a lady would come in and take 2 or 3, and they'd go sit out in the library and do some work. And after 2 hours, she'd bring them back in, another 2 or 3 would go out. And then I was up at, I think, at Metter a couple years ago teaching, Metter, I think 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And the same thing, I was in one class, they had 3 teachers in there with me. And I thought, well, if I'm the sub, why are there 3 other adults in it? Which is fine, but it just kind of caught me off guard, is why are there 3 teachers in this room with 25 kids?
So why is there a sub?
Yeah, well, then why have a sub? And one lady said, well, I'm here for these 3 that are only speak Hispanic, and I'm here for this one that's got some psychological problems, and I'm here for this one for life studies or life skills. I'm not sure what they called it. I think it was life skills. And I thought, that's not the school I grew up in.
So in terms of the number of bus drivers, is that a number like 500 or so?
There's 532 buses,
Okay.
so I would anticipate there's a driver per bus. You know, and I don't know if I'm sure that I would doubt all 532 buses roll every day.
Yeah.
I think they'd have 10, 15 backup buses for in case of. But there's 500 plus buses, so I would anticipate there'd be 500 plus drivers. And I will say, you know, having said that, CISD is a monster geographic district. You know, it's not just a lot of kids, 63,000. It is geographically all over the map when you compare it to some of the other sides of the school districts. I don't know, you know, when you look at
So it goes almost to Willis and
830, goes all the way up to 830.
to this area?
South of here at the Friendship Center some,
Okay.
goes west some, goes east quite a ways over to Caney Creek, they're in CISD, and then goes up to FM 830, which is Willis really.
Yeah.
You know, Willis High School is actually in the city limits of Conroe, which I know school districts and cities don't overlap, but I always think it's odd when you see Willis School District and then you go past the high school and it says now leaving Conroe.
Yeah, I neighbors like it. Okay, good deal, thanks.
What's the, under taxes, what's the annual budget for CISD?
The budget they're pushing now, I think, is right over $600 million, is the budget I see. And that's not counting the bonds, I think 2 or 3 years ago they had, plus they got another bond I'm hearing they're asking for. This one back here in 17-18, I think was 400 or 500 some million, 578, I think.
You heard this was gonna be over 600?
Well, they're adding 22 million to it, so when you add the numbers up, I think it's right at 600 million.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, here's the projected general fund, debt service, capital, food service. The total projected for 17-18 says 727 million. This was off their website. So I had seen something the other day that said 18-19 was 600 million. Now maybe that's talking about their general fund versus their, and that's something else if someone has a question about their general fund, they've got a lot of money sitting there for a rainy day.
How much?
180 million. Now roughly 30 or 40 million of that they have to keep in place. But they've got another roughly 100, well, depending how you add that up, 150 to 180 million. And about 30 or 40 of that they do statutorily need to keep in reserve. But another thing that really pushed me for running was last year when President Melanie Bush, I almost said President Bush, but that could be confusing. When President Melanie Bush of CISD said about reappraising homes during Harvey, and the backlash from the board and the administration that came out of that, saying we can't afford to give the taxpayers those monies. First off, I want to say, but it belongs to the taxpayer. It seems like they don't understand who that money belongs to. And then if you've got $150 million in a slush fund for rainy days, what was Harvey? It was a rainy day. And they're saying we don't want to spend it because we want to save it for a rainy day. Well, to me, that was doublespeak.
So we're paying more out every day because the appraisals on our homes
Absolutely.
rising. The current board likes to brag about the fact, and I was trying to get to that question. Maybe I'll hold off on that. Go ahead, Larry. I'll bring it up next go around.
So just say they have 180 million on hand, and they mandate they have to have 30 to 40 million. So that's, we said 70 million is taxpayer money. As a board member, how could you get that money back to the taxpayer?
Well, I don't know, I don't want to touch on Mr. Wertz's question, if this is where he's headed, but the effective tax rate has to be looked at, and I know they like to say, well, I think they're at $1.28 per $100 evaluation, and some of the other districts around us are like $1.31, $1.32, and they like to say, well, look how much efficient we are. But I'd say, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, when you have $14,000 more cost per student this year coming in, that's not efficient. And someone's gonna turn that valve off before it gets out of control, and some would argue it's already out of control. But I think you'd have to look at an effective tax rate that, based on the appraisal values going up, and here's what this homeowner paid last year, there's few things that make me more angry than talking to a politician, and I said, last year I paid $9,500 in property tax, and this year my bill was $10,002, and they look me in the eye and say, you got a cut. That to me drives me insane. When I say, no, did you hear what I said? My tax bill went up $500. No, it didn't, it went down. I know what I wrote my check for. I know for a fact what I wrote my check for, and it went up.
But the tax rate went down.
Yeah, oh, but the tax rate went down a penny. I said, but that doesn't, and I don't think the people that are, I grew up, I went to Aldine High School. My senior year I went to a school called George W. Carver, which is down in Acres Homes. There in Sheila Jackson Lee country, is where I went my senior year. And I remember having dinner at the table with my mom and dad, my brother and two sisters, saying, show me your shoes, who needs shoes the worst today? And we would get our shoes bought on who needs them the worst. And I remember growing up through high school doing duct tape on my shoes because they had holes in them, and my sister needed shoes worse than I do. And I got a feeling in Caney Creek, and in parts of the Woodlands, and in parts of Conroe, those conversations at dinner time come up. So when I hear an administrator or a school board say, we need $40 million more, or $600 million more, another bond, I'm thinking about those kids that are eating hamburger helper with a can of peas mixed in and no hamburger. Because I was there in my life. Next question. I know. I don't like peas to this day. I won't eat them. I'll eat snack peas.
It's up to me? Okay. Well, you've already answered part of it. I was just curious what all the factors were that induced you to run. Simple question, why did you run for position one? There are 3 positions open.
Well, I went over and looked at them. There's 3 positions open. I picked one. I don't know. Should I have picked a different? I had no idea what that question was coming.
Okay. Well, if that's the honest answer, then that's
Yeah,
the
the
only
honest answer,
you can give.
I looked at the list, and the position 1 was open, and I know Melanie Bush pretty well, and I know she was leaving position 1, and I just said, well, if you're leaving, I'll run for it.
Okay. Have you ever run for any elective office before?
And back in '06, I ran for House District 16.
Okay.
Well, that was when Reuben Hope vacated, and it was won by Brandon Creighton. Our old friend Vicki Rudy also, that just recently retired and moved to Austin. She also ran that race.
Okay. And
I came in 4th in a 3-man race. Yeah, there was Brandon, Vicki, the undervote, and then me. No, I'm just kidding.
well, there's 4 candidates in this one, so we'll. Okay. I'm still interested in you quoted a lot of numbers. I'm not asking you to give me names, but in other words, did you get these all off the website? Did you have conversations with various administrators?
Yeah, a lot of it's right off the website. This is all stuff you can print right off the website. The Conroe ISD District Improvement Plan, the 17-18 budget, all the different schools. There's 6 high schools. It shows all the feeder schools that go into each one and where all the kids start and where they matriculate up to. And then this also, Board of Trustees, Conroe ISD website, got some information here. So it's in there, and if you dig deep and hard enough, see, one thing I would also change, this is just, personal thing. I'd like to see the CISD budget, and I'd like to see the total dollar number right here on the front page. You gotta dig. You have to look, and it's projections and percentages, and number increase, but to find what is the budget, it's like that number, it's almost as though it's been hidden. It's not big and bold.
Okay,
For maybe a reason.
my time's up. Dennis?
Okay. So what has CISD done about school safety, and how's the CISD police structured? What do they cost, and do they have people for every campus? And how about decisions on whether or not to arm staffers? How is that made, and what has it been?
Mhm. Well, this is where some of my conservative friends may disagree with me, and it's a sad situation that I would be for an armed security or teacher or coach or officer at every school. I think part of it's the world we live in. Now, I've spent some time in the Mideast, and I've seen some teachers over there, which it'll catch you off guard when you see a teacher with 30 kids walking down the road with an AR-15 on their back. And you're like, that's a school teacher? But they say it is so dangerous, that's what it's come to. CISD, you know, that their police are actually police. They're not security guards, or years ago they used to be they were kind of police, but they weren't. Now my understanding is all CISD police are actually full law enforcement officers, which, again, I'm for that. When we grew up and two kids got in a fight, you know, it was both you. Well, actually, one school I went to was after school, both you put the gloves on, go in the ring, and sort it out. But that was when I was really young. As I got older, then it was you two figure this out, or I think me and another friend of mine, we had to clean the buses one year. We got in a fight, and our punishment was you had to clean the bus windows together. Now fights, the police are called, and it's assault. You know, when you do have kids, was it at Conroe just the other day where they caught a child, or was it Montgomery where a kid had a gun on campus?
I don't remember where it was.
Just this last week, I read in the paper, there was somebody here locally in Montgomery County, a child that brought a gun to school. I know a week or two ago, that Monday that Willis was out, the students were out, the teachers were out, that my wife called me and said, are you going to Willis? No, I just got an alert that said there's an active shooter at school, at Willis High School. And I said, well, luckily there's no kids there, what's going on? Well, then she said I got another one that said, oops, that was a mistake. But what surprised me is when I got that call from my wife saying there's an active shooter, what surprised me was that it didn't surprise me. When she told me that, I believed her. I instantly believed her. I said, oh my goodness, there's a shooter. It wasn't like, oh no, you're wrong. That can't be. When she told me that, I instantly believed her.
Well, I guess the decision was made supposedly by the board that they're not going to allow staffers to be armed. So I wonder if any of the people that have worked there have asked to be allowed to carry.
I can see that. There's a Guardian plan. There's also one called the Marshall Plan. Going back to what Mr. Fessenden said earlier, I think each local school might have to have some input from the parents of that school to see what they would want. One of my 3 points, though, number 3, though, is no parent should worry when I send my school today, is my child coming home.
Yeah.
And I talked to some people down at Santa Fe, heard some stories from them, and they said that was a while ago, but our community, we're still not healed over that Santa Fe shooting. And so really, it's not an issue of, and again, I hate to say it, I really do believe it's an issue of it's going to happen. It's not if it will happen, I do believe it's a when it's going to happen. And I think it's going to be here in Montgomery County, something's going to happen.
It's usually friendly fire.
Well, it could be.
I mean, it was in Santa Fe, right?
What was in Santa Fe?
Friendly fire
That did what?
that did the shooting.
Was it friendly fire?
Or one of the students.
Well, maybe one of the students, but there was a number of them. He's saying it was an officer or someone that was returning
No,
fire.
the one that committed the act,
What's the statement?
the student.
Yeah, that wasn't friendly
It's
fire.
not friendly.
Friendly fire, yeah, that's, yeah.
Well, it's another
Shot
student,
by
right?
your own.
By your own other student.
Well,
And that's the
friendly
one-
fire is when someone that
You're on
shoots you out of
the
your
side.
group. Like if you're in the army and you're attacking the enemy and someone in your group accidentally shoots you who didn't mean to, that student intended
Well,
to shoot someone.
it was somebody on their team.
We'll call it a
Another
peer
student.
group, out of their peer
You
group.
call it a peer group.
Yeah, so when you said friendly fire, I was thinking, well, I don't think it was friendly.
Well, it's one of your buddies that should have been your friend.
Yeah, well, I can see where you're
Like
headed.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to circle back to a couple of questions. I'm not sure we nailed that down completely, Del. So if we have 150 to 180 million in rainy day fund, and the required or whatever to have 40 million. What do you do with that other 100 million? Can you return that back to the taxpayers, or what is your remedy for that? You know, or where can you direct that money? And then the second question is, because we have some overage here, and the appraisals have gone up, can you reduce that tax rate even more? Would you be willing to stand behind reducing that tax rate?
Absolutely. You're talking about the effective tax rate.
In fact,
Yeah, I would be willing to reduce it, and I would also be willing to say it has nothing to do with the other districts around us. I don't like when people argue, well, that district over there's $1.35 and we're $1.28, so there's nothing wrong with us going up to $1.29, or we should increase it, look how efficient we are. My goal would be what is actually needed. And as far as the money back, yes, to answer your question, that money should go back to the taxpayer.
so how would you do that? What facility?
In lowering the effective tax rate down to the amount that if someone pays $3,000 this year, and next year they pay $4,000, the following year they might be back to $3,000 again. And say, hey, instead of getting you the same, we're gonna start using this money, and the amount we use, we're gonna offset back to you in your tax rate. But you should be able to look at someone every year and say, this year's $1.28, next year it might be $1.31. But you should be able to have a piece of paper that shows, here's where your money's being spent. And I know like a few years ago when gas prices skyrocketed, caught a lot of school districts off guard. When it went from $1.50 to $2.50 to $3, a lot of people got caught off guard by that. So I don't have a problem with saying, here were some things that were unforeseen that we do need this money. Especially when you have 500 buses in the geographic area that CISD covers, gas is a big expense. And when that number goes up, you might have to say we need more this year. But it should be, just like we all in this room pay our bills. 1 month your bills might be $2,000, next month $2,200, then you might have a flat tire. As things come up, we out of our own pockets reach into them and say, I don't want to spend money for the car, but I needed oil this month, or I need
Can't you
tires.
divert some of that money over, instead of doing a new bond next year, just divert that into
Absolutely.
what's on the plan?
Absolutely.
And then that way you just.
Well, let's just start
or maybe
depleting that
yeah.
money however you need to deplete it.
Mhm.
But start giving the taxpayer, and that's one thing I see in all levels of government. I don't think any taxing entity understands, for many years I've said, I feel like I have 100 pennies in my hand, and there's 120 taxing entities saying, I only want one. Well, that only one to them, but there's 120 of you. And each one of you only want 2.5% more, or 3% more. And it's just not there anymore. So if they, are we wrapping up? I feel like I should say hi, Mom.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
Okay,
I've got one real quick one,
sure.
if we got time.
I have one quick one too.
I'll be quick with my answers.
Go.
For years, I've noticed school buses in all the schools, Conroe independent school districts that I drive through, whatever. The buses for years are not full. They're, sometimes look like there's 20 kids on there that's a 50-seat bus. I wonder, does anybody ever look at that and do an evaluation every year or so? If, I'm sure you haven't read anything about that, but I think that one of the ways that you can cut the budget is to do some evaluations, or really, why are you running these big buses when they're...
Maybe consolidate some routes and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if Conroe does that. I do know Willis, they pick up the high school kids and then sit in the back, and then some of the younger kids sit in the front. I think there is some of that I've heard of. I don't know if Conroe does that. But if you could consolidate some routes, and save quite a bit of money.
Yep, or reduce the size of the bus.
My big thing in being in private business my whole life, I'm a very big believer in you've got to be effective and you've got to be efficient. And I just don't find government at any level focuses on efficiencies. And I don't even notice they focus on effectiveness. But that's another story.
Okay.
So what do you, last question, what do you see politically in your future?
Well, there's a lot of talk about me running for position 1 in commissioner. As a matter of fact, I just talked to someone recently about saying that my future, as a matter of fact, my exact words was to Betty Anderson, and I said, God controls my future. I will say right now, I do not have a plan about running for position 1 for Commissioner's Court. That's all I have. Now, I know it's kind of off what we're doing here, but I have asked the commissioner there 2 years ago, I said, is there someone that you would rather me support and not run, or is there someone that you think would be really good at this? Because who would know that better than the current commissioner, at least get wisdom from him? And he told me, Dale, you'd be a fine candidate. That was not an endorsement. It was not a recommendation. He just said, I think you'd be fine for that. But I even went and asked him, I said, is there someone you think would be really good? I'll sit up. I don't have to do anything. I told someone this afternoon asked me a similar question. Some newspaper over in Kingwood area. I don't know why Kingwood called me, but I told them, I said, the same thing. God controls my future. I really don't. And if there was the right candidate, I would not run. If there was the wrong candidate, I might. But right now, I have no plans. I haven't talked to anyone about it. I haven't given dime one towards that goal.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yep. Won't you take up to 5 minutes to your closing, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I would like all the anyone that's still viewing, I hope it's been relatively entertaining for you. I should have done a few jokes along the way, but I didn't.
We like jokes.
You like jokes? Okay, my daughter's afraid of elevators. She's taking steps now to stop to get over that. But anyway, I know it's bad. Now you got me all discombobulated. I do think critically important, I would ask for your vote, number one. First and foremost, I'd be really honored to have your vote for you to consider me as a candidate for position 1 in the CISD board race. And I've got 3 primary goals. One, of course, is, I've mentioned earlier, that every child in the district has an opportunity at success. I look at my own life, or the situation I came out of and where I was. I had teachers that poured themselves into me. Some of my best teachers I still remember fondly today were the ones that were the hardest on me. And pushed me and said, we know what you're capable of and we're not going to let you be lazy. And I think teachers should have that latitude to be able to work one-on-one with the students and not just say, here's a policy I have to follow, and I'm not in the business of educating students, I'm in the business of following the policy. And some of that regulation, as we see at the national level and state level, being undone, and we see unbridled economic growth and prosperity, that same culture has to be put into the school system where teachers can have the freedom to teach, as I mentioned earlier. So one is that every child has a career, vocational, or technical opportunity to succeed in life as far as they can go with what our district can provide for them. The second item is a friend of the taxpayer, someone that says a voice to the taxpayer. I'm going to make sure if I ask you for $1, it will be used effectively, efficiently, and in a manner that you will agree more than likely with, yes, we need to put $1 into that. Primarily new dollars, the majority need to go into the teachers and into the classroom. They can't keep going into new football stadiums and coach salaries and admin's pockets. That system has to change. And thirdly, when you send your child to school, you should be very comfortable that they're safe there. There's going to be, whether it's the Guardian Plan, the Marshall Plan, CISD, police officers, but you know there's someone there that will defend your child and protect them. So that your child can go to a building in the morning, a school building, learn in a good environment, and come home safely. Thank you very much. I do ask for your vote, Dale Inman, for position 1 on the CISD school board. See my Facebook, Dale Inman for CISD. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.